for me, with Java, like it was definitely going in that cloud native direction, even before like cloud native was a thing.
So, hello everyone. We are back with the Cloud Native episode 15. And as we can see, we have like one of the leaders in the Cloud Native, none other than Daniel Bryant. Like, if you have heard about the Ambassador Labs, if you heard about the InfoQ, if you heard about the QCon and stuff, so this is the guy who is like aggressively working around that. InfoQ already everyone knows, and Daniel's work has seen by everyone in the world. So, if you are familiar with the some of the cloud native developer advocates, you must have known him somewhere and somewhere because you have read his articles. You have never checked the who is the writer, but you have listened the what is written. So that was one of kind of an introduction I wanted to talk about Daniel. So yeah, Daniel, you are the one who can introduce yourself in like nicer way and more efficient way. So go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that was fantastic, Rohit. Thank you very much. You definitely made me sound better than I am, I think. But I appreciate all the love and respect there. As in, yeah, I've been in the space now for 20 or so years. Started as a Java developer, moved into ops and architecture, and then sort of briefly forayed into like CTO type roles and leadership. I love like managing people, leading people in particular. And yeah, last 5 or 6 years has been in Ambassador Labs. That's where you and I have crossed paths several times, right? In the same kind of space, and focusing very much on Kubernetes, API gateways, service mesh, all that good stuff. And I recently left there. I fancy something perhaps new, building something from the ground up again. I wish all the Master Labs folks all the luck in the world and all the success in the world, and I'm regularly in contact with them as well. But now I'm taking a bit of a break over the summer and then looking for new challenges starting September.
Yeah, so you will get the new challenges anytime. People are
Thank you.
looking for you.
I hope.
So yeah, so I first of all we can go with this thing like what you think like what pushed you towards the cloud native world because you are from the Java background and then you came to the DevOps world. You have like amazing talks on the Kubernetes and then DevRel and DevOps, like how the DevOps is in the DevRel world and how the DevRel is in DevOps world, kind of a things. I have seen a lot of them and I have seen your work already, and we have come across the paths many times, but never got a chance to talk or something directly face to face. So yeah, that's what I want to ask you today, like why you are into the cloud native space.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And I think, like several things in my career, I kind of stumbled on it, right? But when I say stumbled on it, not in a completely random fashion, it's always a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill. Do you know what I mean? Like I've been quite lucky finding the hot trends at the right time. Do you know what I mean? Jumping on them. I've not done as well as some people. I always maximum respect to people like Sam Newman, right, who got microservices at the perfect time, and he just did an amazing job. But for me, with Java, like it was definitely going in that cloud native direction, even before like cloud native was a thing. You could see in the world of Spring Boot in particular, like it was going, Ruby on Rails was influencing like a lot of the sort of 12 factor apps and these kind of things. And then more and more as companies like Netflix, sorry. And I know we're not all Netflix, I'm always careful with that. But as companies like Netflix start adopting this cloud native way of working, and I remember hearing Adrian Cockcroft talking about this, Rebecca Parsons talking about the influence of ThoughtWorks. As they adopted these technologies, these practices we're now calling cloud native, it kind of cascaded down into my day job. I was consulting a bunch with Open Credo in London. This was 5 or so years into the actual like release of the cloud. You can argue around 2006 time, Amazon kind of kicked off the cloud kind of movement, although we've been doing cloud-like things for a few years before that. But yeah, it just naturally sort of pervaded my space. I couldn't help in the applications I was building bumping into the cloud. When we were looking forward, particularly at Open Credo and then some other companies I joined and InfoQ, we were always looking at what's the next thing. Do you know what I mean? Like a few of my mentors said to me, like the sort of slightly American phrase is skate to where the puck is going. Imagine you're playing ice hockey, right? You don't skate to where the puck is, you skate to where the puck's going. So I always look like for what is the up and coming thing. And I saw cloud, I saw microservices, I saw containers, right? At the same time. And combination with all those things I've just mentioned, and I'm based near London in particular, around 2012 time, the meetup scene just blew up in London, and everyone I was chatting to at the Docker meetups and even the Java meetups, right? Everyone was talking about cloud. So the fact that I'd kind of positioned myself with being interested and the opportunities were there, to your point, that's exactly how I started my speaking career. Did a lot of speaking at the London Java community, a lot of speaking at the cloud native meetups, HashiCorp, Docker, all the brands we know and love these days, right? That's how I kind of started my proper speaking career.
Yeah.
And then, like I say, just everything now is in the cloud, right? So it was a good choice.
Nice, nice. So you came from Java to like cloud space, DevOps space, and then to the speaking space, like DevRel space. So it has been a like amazing journey. Like you gained the experience really well, and you have built the products, and you experienced the leadership roles, and then came to the developer advocacy kind of roles. So like, what do you think on this? Like, what should be the ideal like idle time to get into the this kind of leadership roles for any person who is into the cloud native space and DevOps space, because as we can see there is a lot of hypes around the new roles, and people keep switching from here and there and they get confused, right? So yeah, you are the one who can guide the folks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a open question, I guess, for Hayden, right? Because I was in a podcast, I think it was, and a panel over the last couple of weeks, and we've joked that we've known some people that have been throughout their careers operators, sysadmins, platform engineers, and the job has not changed, right? The title has changed, maybe the money has changed sometimes, right? And like respect, right? As you always go and get your money, like if like moving to become a DevOps engineer gets you more money, rock on, right? Even if you're doing the same job. So it's interesting, right? There is always that notion of rebranding, and I'm sure you and I both like kind of get it, right? Because we even sort of perhaps even do it. So you always be a bit careful of what is the actual job. What are the actual goals, right? What's the actual mission you're doing versus the title? And I come from a point of privilege, I guess. I've never worried too much about like role titles, but I'm pretty sure not everyone can do that. Depending on sort of like if you're starting your career, the title is more important, right? Definitely some of my friends and peers I worked with, you need a certain title to kind of get that gravitas or even
Yes.
get customers talking to you, right? You need to be a VP before other VPs will talk to you. And so
Yeah,
silly as that
actually.
kind of seems to me, it is the way the world works, right? So you got to break down all these things that the roles are somewhat overloaded. But I think it's great science if you actually want to compare sort of roles and role levels, like I think it's levels.fyi actually maps the various like fan companies and other companies, and then you can actually have a sensible conversation of like, what am I actually doing as a software engineer level one? Like, I'm responsible for like daily tasks at that level, right? And as you move up through the ranks, then you're responsible for sort of the weekly tasks, the monthly tasks. And when I say tasks, I really mean mission, right? Vision. When you're up to like kind of senior levels, you're thinking big picture about the product itself, like as you mentioned, not just the feature I'm working on. You're thinking bigger picture. And that's the journey I've gone on. I've been super lucky. And I always say to folks, if you can find mentors, that's really opened up doors for me. And mentors have not only given me sort of something to aim for, like I want to be like that person. Like I was seeing Trisha G back in her Java days. Like, I want to be like Trish, or Kelsey Hightower, right? And we all want to be like Kelsey Hightower when we grow up because like they're just amazing. You know what I mean?
Everyone.
Yeah, totally, right? So like that, Ben, I wouldn't say Kelsey's necessarily a mentor, but I've met Kelsey several times and I've learned a lot from him. But I've had other relationships where people have really guided me, opened doors, and I always try and do the same thing, right, as well, like for other people at the moment. So I always say, yeah, look around, see what other people are doing. Like that can help you sort of like make the decisions of what career to go for, right? I'm having a lot of interesting chats with folks at the moment around this as I'm doing some mentoring online, and they're saying, do I want to be a software engineer? Do I want to be an infrastructure engineer or platform engineer type thing? Do I want to go into leadership? And I always say to them, get your core skills first. So go deep as an individual contributor, as they call it, right? In terms of like, I went super deep in Java. So I knew how to not only code, but I knew about the memory models and memory maps. I knew about how Java interacted with infrastructure, and like not to the point where I could build a processor, but knowing sort of how processors work and how memory works kind of gave me an appreciation to write better code. And crucially, as I've learned new languages or new things, like going super deep, that initial point in my career helps me very easily build new mental models. Do you know what I mean? If I'm working in a statically typed language, oh, I know what that is from my Java days. Oh, I'm working with a heap or a
Yeah.
stack, I know what that is from my Java days, right? And I
Yes.
worked on Ruby and I worked on TypeScript as well, so I've got like, dynamic language kind of mental models. So I always say to folks, early on in your career, go super deep. And then I do find, there's two paths with leadership. You can either deliberately go into it, and I recommend like The Manager's Path, fantastic book by Camille Fournier. There's a bunch of other amazing books too. Like that will give you a primer for what's possible. Or I think in reality, a lot of us in the space just kind of fall into management, fall into leadership. Opportunity pops up. It did for me at Ambassador Labs, as an example. I'd been doing some leadership in the technical space, but there was a gap where we know we wanted to really lean into DevRel, but we didn't have a DevRel team. And Richard, who's the co-founder and mentor of mine for sure, said to me, "Hey, we're going to spin up a DevRel team. You're the logical choice. Do you want to do it?" And I could have said no and done other things, right? That's totally an option. But I was like, "Yeah, it sounds great, right? Let's build a team. Let's do some interesting stuff."
Yes.
And that's kind of my journey, like Rohit, like in terms of like the opportunity was there a couple times. I've done a couple of CTO roles, a couple of like head of type roles, and I like building things, whether it's teams, tech, or systems, or whatever. People are really hard though, right? People are hard compared to tech, but like I do like an amazing team at Ambassador Labs.
Yeah.
And although I've left now, I've got to shout out like Adid Young, Dave, Cindy, Erica. They were like, and Gabby was an honorary member there. They were just amazing folks, and like I was doing a small little part and just magnifying their amazing work, and that's kind of cool to see. I've really enjoyed that part of my
Yes.
journey.
Yeah, so like you build and everything from the scratch, right? So, what were the problems you faced, and how was your journey, like building the entire team of yours at the Ambassador Labs? If you would like to share, and also like you were working for the QCon, sorry,
Yeah.
InfoQ side by side, right? So, how you manage all this stuff?
Everyone asked me that, right? Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll deal with that second bit first, and we can go and dive into building teams. But I am very disciplined, right? And I learned this from another mentor, Richard Sirota. He's at Google now, but he's at various other companies. And Richard's got like 5 kids, couple of dogs, pluralsight courses. His full-time job, like he just does an amazing amount of stuff. And over the years, I've like, Richard, how do you do it? So I'm gonna give him a shout out because he's helped me a bunch. But two things he said was be super disciplined, like every day. If you're trying to get into social media every day, force yourself kind of to write a tweet, right, or do a LinkedIn post. Discipline, discipline, discipline every day, whether you feel like it or not. Write a blog, do a podcast, whatever you're doing, right? Just keep chipping away. And another thing Richard taught me was only go as deep as you need to. And this is a little bit of a contradiction of what we said up front, right? When you're in the beginning part of
Yeah.
your career, you do want to go super deep and spend that time. But later on, I said to Richard, how are you doing all these pluralsight courses? And he was like, I'm not going to the level of like super expert like a Josh Long or someone in that space. Like he was going just deep enough to be able to share what I'm learning. And I was like, because me, I get a bit caught up in these things. I want to know everything, right? And I don't know when to stop. And that's why he goes like, if you can't, stop, you end up only doing a couple things like at a time. Whereas if you can balance,
Exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
easy, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
perfect myself, but if you can balance like sort of just good enough, and that's a very sort of hand wavy term, but like that's what Richard taught me. Is that combination, you have those things, is the way I kind of, that discipline each day. I do a little bit of InfoQ stuff, a little bit of social media, obviously the main job, but like sort of fitting it around in my schedule and then knowing how deep to go. It's so tempting to like when you're spinning up a new project to go all in on it. And I sort of like Richard taught me to, yeah, throttle back a little bit. If you see success, go deeper. If you don't see success, you can like do other things, right? So that's kind of generally how I balance my time. And I would say I use the getting things done system. It's a very famous system. There's books written around how to do it. I use my email, like so, because again, I remember Aditi on my team's like, how do you balance all these things? And I'm like, I write everything down. It's all like either post-it notes in front of me or email using getting things done. And that has really helped me like offload the stress of managing all the tasks. Do you know what I mean? I trust my system, and then every time like I'm looking for a new task to do, I look at my system like and just pick it up and run with it. There's no mental baggage of like constantly worrying about the next thing or deadlines. Like that system takes care of that. I've got a calendar with all my deadlines on, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just focusing on the tasks at hand, not worrying about like managing my time. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of people I speak to, particularly early on in their career, like they're so worried or so stressed about doing things sometimes, they spend more energy doing that than actually doing the thing. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, and I get it because I was there as well. And I luckily found this getting things done system. And I'm like, offload the mental baggage, just focus on the tasks at hand. So that's kind of how I do a lot of stuff right here, because it's a very common question. People are like, you do so much. And I'm like, people do more.
Yeah,
Trust me,
of
I know
course.
people do more, right? But like, as in, this is how I managed to do a lot of stuff. Does that make sense?
Right, right. Yeah, like it is nice, like you are disciplined and you write it down. So that is the two of the important factor which everyone should do it. Like some people make the timetable of everything, and some are like they like do the social media, like social media they prepare month of a things only as a forehand kind of a thing. But in our job, I don't think that is the good way to go ahead because we have to be ultra instinct. Like anytime any can happen and we have to tweet it or we have to post it and kind of a thing. So yeah, like that is the most consistent thing we have to do. It is
Yeah.
not a part of job, but it is like it it is somewhere related to what we are doing. We should be socializing it to the world. So it is nice. So that was nice, nice points to be sure. And so our another question, which is like, you built entire team from the scratch, right? So how was the experience? And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the first part of your question there, because it was a good question. I always like to set up the structure sort of first, and then the team. We knew we needed to interact. Both sharing knowledge and listening to feedback with developers very early on in Ambassador
Yeah,
Labs, and like,
why actually am I asking this question? Because there are only a few companies who have grown the developer relations team from the scratch to the nice way, and they are built like really nice, like Ambassador Labs. And that's why, like, hearing from you will be a lot of guidance to all of the professional folks who are into the developer relations and
mm-mm.
also the cloud native world, right? So yeah, that's why I asked this question.
Yeah, sounds good, Ray. Yeah, and I think we knew very early on that we needed to tap into developers, right? Educate, but also learn from their feedback. And I was doing this. I initially was hired as a product architect, so I was doing a lot of product work. And product, the most important thing in product is listening to your customer. And Ambassador Labs, we were building tools for developers, right? So like developer relations, developer advocacy, kind of is a no-brainer in that respect. So very early on, classic startup. I was brought in about employee number 7, I think it was. So it was only a few of us. I was remote in the UK. I was going over to Boston a fair bit to interact with the team, and like there was like 6, 7 of us in office in Boston. So super early on, and
Wow.
with an early stage startup, you literally do everything, right? Whatever is needed. Even though I was
Yeah.
a product architect, totally doing DevRel, right? Excuse me. And over time it kind of evolved. We built out probably the engineering team, and like when we got product market fit, we got a bit of success with what we now call Edge Stack, which is Ambassador API Gateway. We got a bit of success with telepresence. So once we got that product market fit, we kind of built out the engineering team, the go-to-market team, the sales team, and naturally there's a need for this kind of product evangelist, product expert kind of role. And then Richard and myself were chatting, and Richard was like, you know what, we need to invest more in developer relations. We need to, be educating the developers and clearly building a link between potential community folks, prospects, customers, building that bridge between them and the product organization, the product team, right? Getting that feedback. And then, yeah, Richard, I think it was like 3 years ago, something like that. Richard was like, do you want to lead it? And I was like, yeah, why not, right? Like, he knew I'd built teams before, he knew I'd led organizations before. And I was sort of doing that role, and we were working with a few freelancers as well. And yeah, it was fantastic. I think like made my first hire sort of a month or so later. At that time, hiring for dev roles was really hard. If you remember sort of like 2020, 2021, the market was kind of crazy, right? The whole pandemic situation was obviously very strange. So the market was really hard. Like finding good people and not spending like all my budget was actually really hard. So
Right.
so that was a key thing. And yeah, the team has just evolved over the years. So the final structure I ended up with was we had 2 DAs, so Dave and Adi Diong. Didong's based in Lagos in Nigeria. Dave's based over in Denver way in the US. And we had a content writer, so Erica, doing fantastic sort of content writing and summarizing podcasts. And we had Cindy, who managed the community. So it was on Slack, running a lot of the conference stuff. And that for me was a really nice structure because we had two main products. So roughly speaking, Dave looked after the API Gateway Edge stack space, and the Young looked after telepresence and the dev feedback space. But we all knew everything, and I was sort of helping out a bit in between. And then Erica and Cindy were quite cross-functional in that, like, they were mainly enabling the community and listening for feedback, so they could do that for both products as well. And the size of the company, I think we grew to about 50, 60 people. So a team of DAs about sort of 5 strong felt like a good fit, kind of 10% of the org, right? And then we had our marketing colleagues were running a lot of growth experiments, and we were supporting them. So the product team got built out, and we were giving feedback to them and helping them articulate their message out to the audience. So that's kind of like roughly how we landed on the team structure. And one thing I would say, the most important thing is, whenever you build a team, is making sure you're adding value to the organization. So all the time, like, Richard, the founder, co-founder, and like my sort of managers along the way, like Mark Trang, I'll give him a shout out. We were always saying, like, what's the most important thing for the company at this given point? Is it, and we talked a lot about funnels, right? So like classic marketing funnel, you have awareness, consideration, and decision. And we were like, what's the most important thing? Is it driving awareness? More blog posts, more conferences, right? Is it driving consideration, perhaps more how-tos, more tutorials? Or is it decision making, maybe some sales enablement stuff for the sales folks, right? We could, as DevRels, we sort of knew our tech space and could empathize with the users. So every sort of, every week, month, quarter, and we were saying, what's the most important thing for the business? And that drove a lot of our work. Like, what's the current KPI? Is it page views? Is it sort of, conference people we're chatting to? We talk a lot about MQLs, marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads. Now, I know not every DevRel organization sort of likes to be that close to marketing. We did it in Ambassador Labs. That was the way it worked, because we were very much about sort of making sure we were generating revenue, right? Because we're an early stage company, and like the investors like to see revenue. So I like business. So for me, like, even though I used to be like a technical engineer or whatever, I was always interested in the business side, because, like, what are we building stuff for? Whether it's code, whether it's teams, right? We're building it for a mission, for the business. So I was always asking a lot, what's our current goal? And sometimes we had, these MQL, SQL goals. We even worked on what's called pipeline generation. So actually getting, like, DevRel influenced revenue into the stack. And I enjoyed learning how the sales folks worked all that. And then seeing, like, someone you chatted to maybe in the community go all the way through to buying your product and being a happy user. That's pretty cool, right? Seeing that, I always like
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
complete journey. Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise, you're chatting to folks and, like, you don't know, like, am I helping you? I don't know, right? But if they're buying your product and they're giving you good feedback, or even like not good feedback, sometimes it's still useful, right? So that for me was really insightful. And then we over the sort of 3 years, I think I led the team. We iterated on what was the most important metric for the business at the time. Is it it was quite commonly, it was awareness, and then it moved a bit of revenue and some other things, and then the team, like, I sort of set the parameters, right? And I would say the team are amazing. Like, one really good example is we're looking to generate more awareness. I was chatting to a Didion, and she was like, hey, we could do a guest writer program, right? And like Log Rocket and a few of the other folks have done that. And literally a Didion, I was like, sounds great. She went away, came back with a plan. She was like, here's how I'd run it. Here's the budget I need. What I'm thinking. I asked a few questions. We refined it a little bit, and then she just ran with it, right? And I was like, rock on. That's the kind of people I like to lead. You know what I mean? Like,
Nice.
they don't. I don't need to say do X, Y, and Z. Didion was like, I think this, like, problem could be solved with this solution. And I was like, sounds interesting. Tell me more. And I asked a bunch of questions and managed to get the budget for it. And Didion, like, if you look at the Ambassador Labs blog, still going strong now. Like, most weeks we have a guest writer contributing, and that's great, right? And they get to learn from, like, Didion and myself, like, on how to write articles. They get to share the knowledge with the community. The community wins as well. We get a bit of visibility. So, like, that was a good example of, like, the leadership style I like, right? As in, we've got this problem. Hey, team, got these
Yeah.
constraints, this budget. What do you think? And then they go, oh, we could do this, this. I'm like, brilliant.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, like people come with a guest writing kind of a thing, or like ambassador kind of a programs, which I did at Solo.
Yeah,
So
same,
that also helps to get the user base and the kind of a things which we want to get.
that's it.
So yeah, you mentioned everything. It was nice, nice, like awesome guidance to the folks who want to build that team. And also like we talked about various things around the DevRel world. I guess only you must have spoken this in the few talk. So yeah, other than that, so let's come to the cloud native, right? We have the cloud native podcast. Our focus is should be on the cloud native. Why we are going to the DevRel? Like every time I'm like this. Whenever any developer advocate kind of a role is coming here and speaking about. Last time also, I guess I had the Henrik from Dynatrace, and
Oh
then
yeah, yeah.
then
I see him at
Rockwood,
conferences all the time. Yeah, he's good.
yeah, David was there. So it was really like we are talking about the cloud native, and when we are switching to the developer advocacy, we don't know. So that kind of a thing happens. But yeah, like you have worked aggressively with the Kubernetes and stuff. So what do you believe, like it's like beginners and everyone still like in today's world, they want to directly get into the Kubernetes. They want to learn Kubernetes directly and go to the platform engineering kind of a thing. So there are new terms coming anywhere, right? And also another thing is like it is not just KubeCon previously was just about the Kubernetes and stuff, but now it is not like that. There is eBPF, there is WASM, there is a service
Mhm.
meshes, and various things are there, right? So, what is your take on this?
Yes, it's a shameless plug, right? I did a podcast which is going to be published about a week's time from when we're recording this for InfoQ. So, like you mentioned InfoQ several times. I love the InfoQ folks. So, myself, I think it was Helen Beale, Abby Bangzer, Steve Yan, and Matt from InfoQ. We jumped on and went into depth on this. So, we've got like an hour podcast if folks want to know more about this. But I think, and I've had a few mentoring calls over the last couple of weeks where people have asked, like, is it a good space to get into, like this platform engineering, or what's the deal? Should I learn to code or should I learn to build infrastructure and all this kind of stuff, right? And my answer to all those things is yes. Do you know what I mean? Because like, even though you and I, like, we live and breathe this stuff, right? And it's very tempting sometimes to think everyone's on Kubernetes, and the reality is, it's a very small fraction of the industry that actually are on Kubernetes. And like, even when it's like, depending on what survey you look at, there's a whole bunch of folks that are not even on cloud. Do you know what I mean? So, and I saw this when used to work in the Java space. Like, Java is quite conservative, the space. Like, I was chatting to someone the other day, they were still on Java 8, which is like, I don't know, 10 years old or something. But in the financial world, they don't want to move because they were so risk averse, right? They were like, if I, upgrade to Java like 20 something now, 21, I might break something. And I'm like, I get it, right? So know that there is all levels of adoption out there. And what I say to folks I'm mentoring, I'm like, what do you want to get out of your career? Do you want to be like super deep as a software engineer? Do you want to be super deep as like someone that's an infrastructure person, which is kind of platform engineering at the moment, right? The one thing I would say is platform engineering is a lot more of a product focus than someone who's just building like Terraform or something, right? So I think like there's a certain skill set around platform engineering that you might want to look at. But the market's a little bit weird at the moment with the kind of macroeconomic situations, right? I think that's a global situation. But what I'm saying to folks is invest in your career now, and then when we inevitably pick up again, it might take a bit of time, right? Because that's the way the cycles work in the economic sort of space. It might take a bit of time, but you'll be perfectly positioned when people start going back to do more cloud stuff. And of course, like AI is driving a lot of this. The old LLMs blowing up everywhere, right? And people are a bit overexcited at the moment, but there's going to be new systems built and they will be built in the cloud on these things. So you can't go wrong, in my opinion, by learning some of this stuff. And like, one thing I would say is where we're at now, like you and I kind of got into this when it was like super emergent. There was no real documentation, not much on YouTube, right? But like there's some fantastic stuff out there, like the Caston folks, the Sivo folks, yourself, right? Like there's just so much information and knowledge out there these days. Like, you don't need to spend lots of money. It's more your time in getting up to speed. Do you know what I mean? And I think what I say to folks is get the fundamentals down first, like in sort of cloud and Kubernetes and things, and then sort of go deep on something. Whether you like you and I do a lot
Yeah,
in API gateway and service mesh space, like
yeah, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
good bet. Do you know what I mean? Like, people are always going to need to get traffic into their backend services, always need to route stuff. And you look at companies like Ambassador Labs, Solos, iSurveillance, like there's a lot of Kong, there's a little bit, take your pick, right? Tetrate. There's a lot of folks out there that are doing this work. So that's where I sort of placed my bets. I was like, I see this cloud native comms space being really interesting. But I see also other folks using things like Backstage, which is an internal developer portal or platform from Spotify. There's a lot of investment on these service catalogs and all these things, right? So you could sort of become if you know front end stuff, you could become a Backstage developer, like, and that's the kind of bridge between nice UX front end, like service catalog, to these back end platforms, right? So there's plenty of opportunity out there. The cloud native space is becoming a bit more boring, like, and I think that's a good thing, like, because Java is totally boring too, heads up, right? As in, like, but when, like, Java, when I very first started learning Java back in the early 2000s, it was super innovative, right? And I've seen that whole journey from, like, super innovative, wow, and now Java's properly boring compared to, like, even like Go and other stuff, right? .NET, I'll say. So yeah, I'd say, like, pick where you want to go roughly. Invest that time going super deep. The cloud is a good bet. I think the foundations, like the certifications out there from Amazon, Google, and Azure, and also the CNCF certifications. Like my team at DDong, a few of my team at Master Labs did those certifications, the CKA and CCAD, and I've done the Amazon certifications. I learned a bunch from that. So if people are trying to get into the cloud, that can be a good way to get started too.
Yeah, actually, like certifications are not just about like getting the piece of a paper, but it is just like training. Like CK and CKD are a lot of based on like live real world kind of
That's it.
situations. Yeah, so that will help you to get into the hands-on labs and tasks and stuff. So you guys will learn a lot. So yeah, that is definitely recommended. And Linux Foundation and CNCF is promoting it really nicely. So yeah, try to get coupons and stuff, and you can give it
That's it.
anytime.
Good advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So other than that, so yeah, like that is the one thing. Like fundamentals should be clear. Like people like somewhere focuses not on Linux and security and networking and directly goes on the Kubernetes. So that is not the ideal path. Like everyone, any speaker comes here, they tells the same, right? So yeah, audience, I would like to say to audience, like listen to these folks because they are the industry leaders. They have done this thing. They have gone through the trial and error for sure.
That's it,
So
definitely. I was thinking
that
that totally. I've made the mistakes right here, right? Learn from my mistakes.
so that's why like they have gone through mistakes and they are educating you for the same. So yeah, like free education is like everywhere is available. We just need like eager to learn or something.
That's it.
And another thing is like, so what do you think like in the coming future? So what will the trending kind of a technology like today is the Gen AI and today
Yeah.
is the uh, everywhere. So I see like any cloud native companies are also want to integrate the AI into their products. So that is everywhere is happening. But let's see like Kubernetes is trending, right? Kubernetes was trending and it was like talking big thing everywhere. And Kelsey is like now Kelsey is not in Google and he has like recently
Yeah.
announced a
Surprise, right?
retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things happening in the cloud native space. Like you are like sleeping one day before and wake up another day and there is new
Yeah.
thing launched.
True.
So yeah, similar thing like there are a lot of things, right? ABPF is there, Bosom is there, and various things are there. So
Hmm.
everything has a various goals. So what do you think will be the future of the cloud native space? And we now nowadays there is a term called it's a cloud native 2.0, 3.0 kind of thing.
Yeah, I've seen this with Web 2.0 and 3.0, right. Kind of
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, I think there's two paths emerging, right? And I have seen this because I've been, like, I'm old enough to have seen this perhaps in other domains within our space. And I think there's the super hipster space you alluded to, right? So Gen AI, low code, no code, and even put WASM and those kind of things, like write once, run anywhere, in that space. And if you like the innovative, breaking new ground, not being too sure what you're doing, and learning a bunch and having a big impact, that is totally where it's going. Do you know what I mean? I think, like, we're only just, like, I think we're on the bit of a peak of hype with the Gen AI stuff. Like ChatGPT blew our minds, and now we're actually realizing, like, oh, there's a bit of, a few limitations. Like, it is somewhat of a random sentence generator, right, or plausible sentence generator. It's not actually sentient, like, as some people might be saying, but there's a lot of potential there. So if you're into that kind of space, I think, like, that, it's definitely, I see more things that we're automating now, even like alerting as an example, right, or building out experiments. I see a lot of that being harnessed by the domain of AI. So no longer will I have to sort of go through a low code tool, or even coding some of these things. I think, business people, in quotes, and I consider myself business people person sometimes, like, we'll just write something out or say something and the thing will happen. Like, reroute 10% of traffic to this new service I've created that does this experiment, and it will just happen, and it will give you like comments on, oh, this experiment's not performing, should I turn it off? I'm like, yes. I can totally see that being like the future, right? It's basically what we're doing now, like automating a lot of things. Like that's DevOps, right? That's platform engineering, but automating it in a more human understandable way, so that even the folks that don't have programming backgrounds like us, right, can still do a lot of things. And we saw that with low code, no code, and I think that's a massive bump with the AI space. And if you're in the more like, sort of like engineering space, I'm with you. WASM and eBPF are two very interesting technologies. I think WASM for like extensions to things like proxies and API gateways. So we used to write Lua for like Nginx back in the day, right? I see like WASM, like pick Rust, pick Go, whatever you like, compile it down to WASM. It's going to be a
Yeah.
really nice language for like extensions to those kind of tools. And I think eBPF is a bit closer to the kernel by definition, right? But what I mean
Yeah.
there is like if you want to work on those low level things, like for me, like it's not really my jam. I'm fascinated by it, but it's just like it's not my skill set, right? I leave it to like Liz
Yeah.
Rice and Thomas Graff and all those folks that are doing amazing work in that space, right? And the isovalent folks doing really cool stuff. And I know Sysdig, same deal, right? They're doing it from the security space. Like that is really interesting. And if your skill set is sort of more kernel level, I totally would recommend like getting involved in that kind of stuff. But then I like just to like close out. That's the one kind of innovator path, right? That's where I like sort of earning my money. I like spending my time there, right? But a lot of people I chat to like want a more stable thing, want it more well known, and I think that's a lot of opportunity in the cloud space. Like Kubernetes, like, again, you and I love it, right? But the average developer is like, I don't care about Kubernetes. I want to just code, ship, and run. Like I want to just ship my
Yeah.
thing, right, and run it. And
Yeah.
therefore, I see like when I was at KubeCon in Amsterdam, a lot of DevOps engineers I was chatting to, a lot of people sort of self-identified as DevOps. They were like deliberately trying to hide Kubernetes from their engineers, right? They were like, we're hiding Kubernetes, we're kube Kubernetes API, kubectl. We're just exposing like a UI for our developers. So there's a lot of opportunity there, right? For people that want to like, if you're sort of getting into like a classic programming space, you can be building these UIs like we talked about with Backstage and other things, right? And there's just a lot of underlying infrastructure stuff that it is kind of, I think, classic kind of infrastructure engineering. It is building the Terraform or the Pulumi or whatever you're using to create the foundations for these platforms. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a big space. Like the people in Amazon, Azure, DigitalOcean, all those folks, they're building the kind of like metal level and like the services, right? The real
Yeah.
core APIs. And I think there's a lot of companies that will call themselves platform or teams within companies that will call themselves platform teams or engineering enablement teams, as Sarah Wells calls it, which I like. They're kind of taking some of these lower level primitives and bolting them together, right? And I think there's an even a higher team that is a bit more product focused, bit sort of closer to developers, kind of SRE like maybe. I don't know, a lot of names flying around there, but there's just a lot of opportunity for ultimately helping the business deliver value. Do you know what I mean? Whether you're writing the app code, you're helping people run these things in production, or you're building the platform foundations, it's just so much opportunity there. I think the hardest part, when I'm chatting to folks I'm mentoring, the hardest part is just picking a bit that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of people want to know like all the things, and I'm like, hey, just learning how to write Terraform stuff is like it's a good chunk of work, right? And
Yeah.
thinking about how you treat a platform as a product, that's a good chunk of work there. You got to like learn about design thinking and like UI and UX, right? And then let alone all these things. So there's a lot of opportunity in that space. I did a presentation actually in Valencia last year in KubeCon where I talked about from Kubernetes to PaaS to what's next. And I literally
Yeah.
on my final slide I had like I think there's a lot of innovation going to happen like around the backstage kind of integration type level, right?
Yeah.
And not just the
Mm.
UI, it's kind of like the APIs and all these kind of things. Because like actually I saw a great tweet, sorry, from Kelsey Hightower. Kelsey's always doing amazing tweets. So I'm so jealous. I wish I could do his tweets. But he was like, and it was really like satirical. He was like, it's really easy to get started in the cloud. Just choose 200 of these services from the CNCF landscape, and you're good to go. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. We all joke, and the CNCF are genuinely amazing, but where we've had this kind of Cambrian explosion of innovation and services and all these things, and you and I have been part of that, right, in our
Yeah.
companies. Now, for the average developer, and I use that as a not rude way, like for the average developer, that's overwhelming, right? They don't want 200 options, 200 things.
Yeah.
So, like, I just see like that is the next big evolution in the kind of more safe, more boring side, is like making that stuff easy for the rest of us, like not the Kubernetes like innovators, for the rest of us, right? Making that stuff easy to actually use to ship your code and to deliver business value.
Yeah, right. Shipping the code is like one of the major business from the long time, but yeah, I when I hear from you and Kelsey and other folks, these are really innovative. Like I think I also like somewhere think like this will be the one of the potential future for our cloud native space, because not everyone can go and like start using the services. There are
That's
big
it.
landscape like what all they can choose and go ahead, right? So yeah, like that's all for today. I want to like disturb you. So it was like long talk, and we had like various things talked about, and I know like I will, if I continue, you will talk more. So
Thanks, Rohit. Yeah.
but I don't, yeah, but I don't want to take more of your time because it is
Appreciate it.
really valuable. But yeah, like you shared a lot of points to summarize. Like you mentioned your journey, and then how to like be the efficient developer advocate, DevRel, and build the teams in the developer advocacy, and how the like how the cloud native company work and how the things are there. So in the somewhere future, when we connect again, we will also like to share with the audience like what actually is this this news tag InfoQ and these companies, what they actually do and what happens around that. So that is one of the point we can take anytime. So there are a lot of things we discussed, and I would recommend audience like please check the things which we shared today, and it will help you to start your career in the beginner as a DevOps engineer, platform engineer, whatever you want to be. Because like don't directly go to the like trendiest things which are available now, because it will be long short problem for you. So make the fundamentals clear first, and then you can move ahead. So thanks for joining today, and if you like this podcast and other podcast and stuff, so do like, share, and subscribe. I will give the links in the description for the Daniel and his work, and whatever he mentioned today, like writers program and various things. So that will help you to explore the things. So thank you for joining, guys. And like if you want to connect Daniel, if you want to ask him, he's available somewhere. So it is
Everywhere on
not
the
like
internet.
he will not reply you like just in a go, but yeah, he will
Yeah.
reply for sure, I believe. So he's one of the humble guy available in the our cloud space. So yeah. So thanks for joining, and I hope Daniel also enjoyed our today's cloud talk. So yeah,
Thanks a lot, Rohit. It's been great. Yeah, we covered some good topics there, so I appreciate the questions.